They're both big personalities. I think a lot of people anticipated that there would eventually be some friction, but this has been obviously quite public.
Yeah, this is just extraordinary when you have the language that's being used, which before this administration we weren't familiar with seeing coming from the White House or from those senior advisors. But this bill specifically described as an abomination, and then Donald Trump using the term Trump derangement syndrome. Is there any substance to this, or is this all the kind of the theatre that we've come to see in politics there?
I mean, I think, a lot of this is sort of theater, although both these people, both Trump and Musk, are, people with histories of really bitter fallouts with people that they used to be close allies with. So I think, again, this is somewhat unsurprising in terms of them not being able to sustain a long-term partnership with each other. But I think a greater zoom out would be that Musk really drove a lot of popularity for Trump during the campaign. He bankrolled him. He has an appeal amongst definitely younger men who really admire him as an entrepreneur. He really helped Trump gain a lot of visibility and credibility with his reputation as someone who is smart, who has sort of been irreverent and who has been extraordinarily successful. And the DOGE sort of operation that Musk was heading as part of his time during the administration, I think was extraordinarily unpopular, even as it executed some of the things that were core to the vision of Project 2025, which is a document put out by the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank that has long backed Trump and, was not necessarily something that Musk himself or the tech industry conceptualized. So, for instance, firing large swaths of the civil service and replacing those people with people who would be ideologically loyal to the administration, concentrating power under the executive branch. That was all stuff that's laid out in Project 2025 as a goal of the Trump administration, sort of independent of its entanglement with Musk. But as DOGE sort of did some of the execution of those things, specifically through its access to government systems and agencies, it became pretty clear that that was pretty unpopular. And I think as we've seen time go on, and Musk's time in government was legally already going to be limited because of his role as a special government employee, which he noted in his interview, in his press conference with Trump last week. But I think that DOGE was doing things that many people in the Republican Party still would say that they wanted, which is cutting all these different programs, firing all these people, but was doing so in such a brutal and public way that it made DOGE very unpopular. And Trump is incredibly sensitive to how he appears and to his popularity. So I think in that capacity, DOGE really acted as a shock absorber for some of the ire that might have otherwise have been directed towards the administration as a whole. And DOGE itself, as Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt mentioned last week in a press conference, a lot of those people are now being absorbed into the agencies themselves. So the DOGE project of sort of cutting agencies, diving into data and IT systems and marrying them across agencies to enforce the Trump administration's agenda, that is likely to continue. And so I do think there is an element of this where, this sort of rift between the two of them was kind of inevitable based on DOGE's unpopularity. And then on top of that, you have these two people who are both incredibly public and seemingly incredibly sensitive to criticism and incredibly powerful.